few years ago, a television show captured America's imagination like never before. With a powerful style of storytelling combining outrageous plot lines, dramatic plot twists, and riveting over-the-top characters, Americans became addicted to it, with millions actually thinking it was real. Obviously, it's not. There's no way something this insane could ever actually be real. It's a fictional TV show called American Emperor. Like Succession, Game of Thrones, and Breaking Bad, all rolled into one. Each week, this podcast goes behind the scenes to break down each episode, talking to insiders and fans to bring you everything you need to know. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. This week, another debate episode. This time the VP candidates go at it, and by go at it, I mean try and put you to sleep. It was J.D. Vance versus Tim Waltz in a good old-fashioned bore-off. Who did their debate prep? An Ambien? Watching this thing, I was nodding off faster than a young woman who sipped from her drink at a P. Diddy party. They really had people on the edge of their seats, looking for their remotes, so they could change the channel to anything. Put on the Liberty game. Yeah, sure, these guys are a heartbeat away from having a pulse. The Vance character seemed to blame immigrants for everything, from high crime to high rent. Hey, leave these people alone. Unless we find out they're responsible for this debate, then mass deportations. If he's gonna blame any immigrant, let's start with the Indian woman threading his eyebrows. And Tim Waltz, seriously, are you from Minnesota? Because you never mention it. Honestly, does anyone know where this guy's from? What a mystery. Word around town is if you say Minnesota 3 times, Tim Waltz pops up and reminds you he's from Minnesota. Plus, just because the Trump character is not on stage at the debate doesn't mean he's cutting back on saying crazy shit. Whether we're saying Kamala Harris is mentally disabled or that there should be one violent day of policing that would end property crime, one thing is clear. He was missed at the debate. And the Trump character breaks out more merch. A coin with his face on it and a $100,000 watch, estimated by many to be worth at least $26. The only thing this guy won't put his name on is a pledge to accept the result of the next election.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a dizzying episode with storylines introduced and resolved at a frantic pace. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show.
I don't like flies.
I wonder where the fly came from. See?
2 years ago, I wouldn't have had a fly up here. Never been a big fan of flies. I don't like flies.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm Christopher Lansing, and I'm joined by author, filmmaker, and pop culture critic Tom Robb. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Tom, an incredible show that we just saw. But before we start, I got to jump on this quick story I have. I was playing Pickle Ball the other day with my son, and I'm waiting for my court to come up. And right before our court opens up, this guy comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, I love the podcast that you're doing. It's amazing. I love the fact that everything in our news cycle is actually part of a TV show called American Emperor. Even though it seems real, it's totally not. I love it. I love it. I love it." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And he goes, "Oh, and by the way, happy opposite day."
Wow.
Unbelievable. It's like, guys, just open your eyes.
And you know what? Fuck pickleball, by the way, too.
Fuck pickleball. Come on, man. Let's get into it. A curious week. I think producers and writers may end up regretting giving so much of this episode over to the J.D. Vance character. The show seems to be positioning certain characters for the future, a future with or without the Trump character. The Harris debate episode, she seemed to meet the task. In this episode, where there was a debate between the vice presidential candidates, I don't know if the Vance character met the moment. How do you feel about that?
It was a little bit of a letdown. I think we were expecting J.D. Vance, as the casting director was, to be sort of a muscular, masculine Liam Neeson or Gerard Butler, and it's not turning out that way. It's turning out to be sort of just a slightly effeminate, puffy-faced, nasty character. And you've mentioned the makeup. we've seen with some other oddball characters in public life. But I understand that's from the Vance Character's acting coach, Nathan Lane, who wears stage makeup everywhere. So maybe that's a trend, speaking of the future, where we're all going.
Well, look, I mean, if you're going to wear permanent eyeliner, okay, that's totally fine with me if your name is Marie Osmond. If you come up to me and you're wearing permanent eyeliner, I'm going to ask you for some ID. It better the fuck well say Marie Osmond on that license. Otherwise, get the hell out of here with that shit.
And with the pancake makeup, you better be in a kabuki Japanese theater show or Carol Channing. I'm dating myself, but Carol Channing was a wonderful Broadway performer.
You bring up kabuki Japanese theater. It reminds me of another form of Japanese theater that existed many, many centuries ago. It was called no theater. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but at the time, if it wasn't for no theater, there would be no theater.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a rich cultural history, but that's not why we're here. We're here to discuss this episode. Let's get to it. You mentioned it a little bit before. When they designed this character, there were whispers that were making it the heir apparent to the Trump character. They largely meet Trump's hateful rhetoric with him, but the personality is just not there.
Yes, it's been sort of yelled out of him.
Well, we're kind of like not addressing the reason for this Vance character and what we're speculating on. The 900-pound gorilla here is that the actor who plays Trump, Sir Lawrence Davies, his contract is coming due. For him to go into contract negotiations, he is asking for an extremely steep price. Showrunners and the producers and the writers of the show knew that they were coming in. They were going to have to pay this guy what he's worth, which is astronomical. But a lot of mistakes were made. They specifically told everybody in Davies' orbit not to mention that the cast of Friends once each made $1 million per episode. Davies found out, and he was absolutely livid. The last I heard, his asking price is now $1 billion per episode. And you know what? He believes, and many people do, that he'll get it. Your thoughts?
First of all, just from the inside scoop, he was livid before he found out about the salaries. He was livid that there was ever a show called Friends. He looked at a couple of episodes. He thought the loft they lived in was far too expensive, and just didn't believe the premise and thought it was derivative of a lot of other shows. Did think Courtney Cox was hot, but yes, he wants an extraordinary a number of asks. I know that he wanted a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. I know that he wanted his own kiln and throwing wheel because he is very creative. He had a loom last season, but I don't know. I mean,
well,
I think they're going to give it to him.
Well, you saw that his contract asks or demands, they were leaked a couple of months ago, and that document ended up on the internet. And some of the things on it are just like, he wants the buffalo population to be restored in the northwest of the country to pre-industrial revolution levels. He often laments the massacre of the buffalo. He feels strongly about it. And he's like, hey, this may be my one chance to right this historic wrong. Another thing on this list demands, quote, another river. Vague, no detail. He doesn't say where. He just wants in the United States there to be another river.
Well, he's long been an advocate of water travel and canal interchange, and been very disappointed that trains and planes and buses have taken over. He's a very pre-industrial revolution guy. He likes Mumford & Sons and the Avid Brothers. He likes anything having to do with an 1850s dry goods store. You look at his home and it's festooned with butter churns and buggies, and this is what his billions will go to.
Yeah, when you get a rare glimpse into his private life, you see absolutely that. He does have a butter churn, curiously, that is electronically powered, which is weird because it kind of defeats the purpose of what a butter churn is. And he also...
I will say, it makes an extremely smooth butter. I've had some of his croissants when I've interviewed him. I can't fault that product.
And also, he's very susceptible to party games because I believe he was around for a conversation, one of those icebreaker conversations where somebody asked, oh, if you could have a lunch date with 3 people living or dead, who would it be? I believe he got very into that conversation. And then lo and behold, on his list of demands for his contracts, he wants the writers and the producers and the showrunners to set up a lunch date for him with Abraham Lincoln, Jimi Hendrix, and Martin Luther, the monk from the beginning of the Reformation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be some tough items to fill. But let's get to the actual debate. There was a lot of build up to it. This is now the 3rd episode where we have had a debate. I think the audience is a little bit over the debate. I know that they want to use this set and get the most use out of it as possible. The Vance character did a lot of floundering. I guess they thought having him blame immigrants for everything that was brought up was a good idea on paper, and it aligned him with the Trump character, but I think he went too far. He ended up blaming immigrants for the lackluster response to the George Clooney, Brad Pitt release Wolves on Apple TV+. Do they really think that that's going to resonate with this audience, that the audience is going to buy that? Especially when it's so clear that the marketing of that movie left so much to be desired. That's not on immigrants. That's on Apple TV+.
No, I agree completely.
Did you even know that Brad Pitt and George Clooney had teamed up again for a feature film?
No, I didn't. What can I say? This vice presidential characterization thing is a little hard to buy.
And also the blaming of immigrants for rising housing prices. That was interesting. I know personally, if I go to one more fucking open house where I see a South American immigrant fresh from coming over the Rio Grande with $100K in his pocket, ready to put down for a down payment on a house, I'm going to blow a gasket. You sign into those open house things. You see the names right there, Tom. Gutierrez, Ramirez, Garcia. I mean, I just turn around and go home. I don't even take the free cheese that they're offering.
I agree with you completely. That's definitely a red flag. The other accusation that new immigrants from places like the Canary Islands and the Maldives, West African states, are building in flaws in American cars on assembly lines. There are very few immigrants fresh in the country that are working for the large auto manufacturers and sabotaging cars. We put the numbers at for somebody in the country 2 or 3 days to be working on a Chevy line.
I mean, obviously that's a union job. Yeah. I mean, you got to get grandfathered into half those jobs. I know you can't say that out loud, but there's no way somebody is going to be, coming from a border covered in dust and walking into a plant and getting one of those nice jobs.
Getting thrown on an Elantra or something like that his first day.
Some of the episode, by the way, was interesting. They've shot it live, which was an interesting thing to do. You see that there may have been a flub or two. Like at one moment right here, the Vance character caught himself when he said, "Hey, I thought you weren't going to fact check."
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check by
Thank
our
you,
own.
Senator.
Since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
You think that was an ad lib, or you think that was in the script?
I think he made it up on the fly, and that's something they do all the time.
You could see it through the 2 moderators here. They kind of looked at each other like, what's going on here? It was noticeable to a fan of the show who is used to the cadence and the rhythm of the show. Let's talk about the differences between the Vance character and the Waltz character. They have Vance as the epitome of evil. In the weeks prior to the episode, he's just out there being a dick. And then I read in the trades where they hired Sergio Ramirez, the reclusive writer who only famously works 11 minutes a day. He's the guy who designed traditional dick characters throughout the ages that have been just so effective. He designed the Peck character in Ghostbusters, played by Atherton, total dick. Then he designed the professor character in A Real Genius, also played by Atherton and played to the epitome of being a dick. And of course, the third part of that Triple Crown, he designed the reporter character from Die Hard, a total asshole who almost tells Hans Gruber where John McClane and his family live. Richard Thornburg was his name, a perfectly played asshole dick designed by this guy Ramirez. And now they have Ramirez writing for JD Vance. So this place, they will spare no expense and bring on the best in order to craft these characters.
And Ramirez actually had something to do with Anthony Held getting that role in Silence of the Lambs as as Frederick Tilton, another huge asshole.
Dick. And he was asked to design the character in Karate Kid, who was Daniel Russo's rival, who also went on to play the same role in Back to School as a diver, but they couldn't meet Ramirez's price. So basically Ramirez farmed that off to his wife, who got some money for it.
Connie Ramirez, of course, designed the character that Craig Sheffer played in Some Kind of Wonderful, the awful rich guy who is a rival to the leading man, has the shit kicked out of him by Elias Koteas. I highly recommend that film.
Now, when it comes to Waltz, however, it's a complete 180. He's a dad. He's a football coach. I thought it was overkill when he stopped in the middle of the debate and lent somebody in the crowd $5. I mean, we get it. He's a good guy, okay?
Oh, my God. He's got lame animals in his pockets. He's tamed birds. He's adopted people. He'll stop by a roadside and fix a tire. He'll perform CPR, Heimlich you, give you instruction on foreign languages. He'll do anything to be a help out neighbor.
Yeah, they've only started keeping statistics about this since 2019, but he has been the all-time leader in California of giving successful Heimlichs, something like 44.
Exactly. And if there's an Amish barn raising, I mean, you can bet he's there with a pitcher of lemonade, handing it out.
Yeah, I mean, they sometimes when they don't know where he is, they stage a barn raising and he appears. So they know how to
lemonade.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, this famous story is from his audition. When he took the sides, he asked if he could put his own spin on it, and then he walked out of the office where the casting director was, right onto Wilshire Boulevard, right up to a single mom who had 2 kids. Put his hand on her shoulder and said, "I appreciate what you do." He didn't read any of the copy. He got the job immediately.
And this character, we've got somebody who'll just helicopter down onto an ongoing high school football game and start line coaching. Let me help out in any way I can.
Well, you know that East Valley High against the Lehigh Valley High football game went to quadruple overtime and was scored 210 to 217. Waltz came in halftime, gave a pep talk to East Valley High, felt bad that he gave too much attention and went to Lehigh across the way, gave them the same pep talk. They were both so juiced up from the great pep talk that they went to 4 overtimes.
Yeah, imagine 4 miracle speeches by Kurt Russell in a row. You have exhaustion.
Remember he fixed a splint for a squirrel that injured its arm? Let's touch on this real quick. We're talking about this Waltz character. Obviously, they're selling hard the aw shucks stuff. Does he have a secret?
I think he might actually be an English aristocrat, not a Midwestern yokel. There are too many things about his demeanor. I've seen him in a kilt, the way he handles a fork, the way he measures the distance between the cutlery on his table. I think he's an East Coast old money American mother and an English aristocrat father. He just has a great way of pouring on the corn pone.
Now, conversely, the character that he's attached to is Vance. He's had a tougher road. Do you think that they will reveal in an upcoming episode soon that he's either a robot or an alien? Because they're certainly hinting on it. Did you see how hard it was for him to buy donuts?
I'm J.D. Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay. Ma'am, if you don't want to be on film, you're good. If you don't want to be on film, you're okay.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. He's very much like the Jeff Bridges character in Starman. He's been known to say that humans are interesting because they're at their best when things are at their worst, which always makes me cry.
Let's touch on this real quick. Our producers taking this different tact with the Vance character than they did with the Mike Pence character. You remember when Pence did his debate, it was more of an attempt at comedy that time around. They had a fly land on his head. They had him refer to his wife as mother. They have this pious religious man making excuses for the grotesque Trump character behavior. There was an inherent tension in his character that's not there with the way Vance is drawn.
No, they decided to go in a decidedly different direction. A pig-eyed eyeliner wearing vicious neo-Nazi. So that's definitely different than a slightly effeminate evangelist from God knows where, who mans up at the last minute after committing war crimes for the last 4 years. We're all over the map here, but it's been said since Senator Garner, who was FDR's vice president, it's a shit bucket job for fuckfaces
All right, let's move on to another topic here. Even though he was not in the debate, that didn't mean that the Trump character in this week's episode didn't play a major role. He seemed to be trying to steal the spotlight from the Vance character all along the way. He was doing all these crazy things outside of the debate. He had this instance where he was trying to essentially talk about the effectiveness of violent policing. Essentially, he was trying to evoke the purge.
You know, if you had one day, like one real rough, nasty day with the drugstores as an example, one rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately. End immediately. You know, it'll end immediately.
Why is this character so into the purge?
The purge is an idea he's latched onto, and there are a number of other turistas. He loves that plot, and to apply that to policy, you know, with a bunch of young kids going to Brazil and having their organs removed. I don't know how that's going to help the American people, but it'll be interesting to watch.
Right. This week, he also said that the Harris character was mentally disabled.
Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way. And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country.
Why is it important for the Trump character to constantly be out there saying crazy things, reminding people of his madness?
Well, let's remember this show is not a show about politics and policy, because nobody cares about that. This is about madness, megalomania, and the leadership of a tyrant.
This is a show about a sociopath, about a well-painted picture of what madness looks like when it manifests in the human form. This show could easily be set in an ice cream parlor or a family physician's office, as it was originally done in the CBS sitcom Becker.
Yes, exactly.
Another thing I wanted to talk about this week is the side characters that you see, because the main difference between season 1 and season 2, which both have been phenomenally successful, I might add, are these side characters. In season 2, it's been hard for the show to run as many effective characters as they had in season 1. New characters have either stumbled, sometimes they've been introduced and then abandoned. Sometimes we've had high hopes for certain characters and seen them not do well. Let's play a quick round here. We're going to say sizzle or fizzle on a bunch of different side characters. Let's start with RFK Jr.
I'm going to have to say sizzle. There's something bizarre, twisted, repulsive, and interesting every day. Not something you'd ever want in government, but certainly something you'd want on a Morton Downey or Jerry Springer show.
Yeah, begrudgingly, I'm going to say sizzle. Too. I don't like him, but I have to say the brain worm, the killing of a bear and putting him in Central Park, the dead carcass of a whale on top of a car, not only his anti-vax sentiment, but anti-lozenge sentiment. There's a lot that pops when he walks onto the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, next up on the list, Mark Robinson, the guy who's the lieutenant governor from North Carolina. Pure sizzle. The show is obviously putting effort into this guy. They're signaling that a lot will turn on him. It started 2 weeks ago with these crazy rants.
Get mad at me if you want to. Some folks need killing.
He'd rather vote for Hitler than anyone in D.C. He hates the movie Black Panther. Then they really poured it on. He's bringing Papa John's pizza to live porn shows. He's giving it out so people can eat pizza and watch porn. And then last week, they really exploded. He's on this porn website called Nude Africa, calling himself a black Nazi. There's video of Trump and J.D. Vance supporting this guy.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids, okay? Now, I told that to Mark. I think you are Martin Luther King times 2. And he looked at me, and I wasn't sure, was he angry because that's a terrible thing to say, or was he complimented? I have never figured it out.
Are you comfortable with Mark Robinson as the Republican nominee for governor in North Carolina?
Well, look, the allegations are pretty far out there, of course, but I know that allegations aren't necessarily reality.
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public opinion.
They've just really made this dude, a figure. A couple of weeks ago, I would have been like, who is that guy?
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm going to go for a sizzle.
Now we have this other character. Kevin Roberts is this guy who leads the Heritage Foundation. They've been trying forever to make this Project 2025 thing a real thing. Last week, they say he killed a dog. Why are so many of these writers and producers putting this element into their characters where they kill a dog. They had Kristi Noem do it famously.
I mean, I think the rule with murdering an innocent animal is that the woman has to be hot to get the national interest.
So strong fizzle from me on that.
Fizzle.
I assume that you're giving it a fizzle for Kevin Roberts.
Fizzle.
Laura Loomer, this character popped like 2 weeks ago. We haven't seen her since. Like, what's going on there?
Trying to build her into something. She's wacky. She's goofy. She's extreme. She's sort of like a Goebbels character in the Hitler administration, willing to stir up trouble. And it's a classic character who'll take the heat and deflect it from the real believer and fomenter of the craziness.
All right. I mean, that's a nice way to say it. I'm going straight fizzle.
Fizzle.
On Laura Loomer. She's full of hate. Hey, you want to hate on somebody? Hate on that plastic surgeon who did that to your face. You know what I'm saying? Doug Emhoff.
Doug Emhoff is a real fizzle for me.
Fizzle.
I think if they're going to throw any money into that family, it has to be the sort of anemically fashionista daughter who has some potential. Doug Emhoff is just a wet noodle who's turning out to make slightly offensive political statements.
Yeah, I agree. I give him a fizzle.
Fizzle.
And you know what? I almost fell asleep while fizzling this dude. That's how unexciting he is to me.
Sleepy. Fizzle.
Last question on this run. Why aren't we seeing more of the Don Jr. character?
I think they're torn. I think that they find the Beavis and Butthead qualities of those sons a mixed bag. Those characters can be interesting, but also very offensive. I don't think anybody's ever understood why they're there and what they're doing. Much more fascinating, of course, is Baron, who's now 8 feet tall, and growing, which, leads to another one of our topics.
One thing I did find out about the Don Jr. character, one reason that explains that he's not on the show so much is that the actor who plays Don Jr., who is portrayed as being very dumb, the actor himself is very dumb and doesn't understand what acting is. So when they gave Don Jr. the quality of having a cocaine problem in season 1, the actor didn't know he was supposed to act, and he himself got a cocaine problem and had to go into rehab. So it's very hard to keep that guy on set. For example, there was a scene where he was hammering a picture into the wall, like to hang a picture, and he was supposed to hit his thumb with the hammer. Now, an actor would portray that where he would pretend, but the Don Jr. actor character doesn't understand what acting is. He hit his own thumb and cracked his thumb, and he was out of commission. So that guy that they hired and they're kind of stuck with now is very stupid.
Yes, I've heard that one of his first roles was on the movie Heat, where he played a police sharpshooter. And they gave him a long-range assault rifle, and he took out 16 extras. So the fact that he's still working at all is incredible, given the trouble they've given Alec Baldwin. Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to answer your questions. That's right, the listener email section, a.k.a. Talking Trump Talkback segment when we return. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show. Hello, Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show listeners. Thanks so much for listening and subscribing. We'll get right back with more show in just a minute, but before we do, just wanted to remind some of you that right here on the show at this very moment is an excellent place for a sponsor to run an ad. Just reach out to us on Instagram at American Emperor After Show or by email at AmericanEmperorPod@gmail.com and get your message or product out and associated with this amazing podcast. Hopefully there'll be some space left for you, BetterHelp or ZipRecruiter, because the high-powered sponsors are already claiming their territory. Okay. What we have here is really our first read for the show. What a read is essentially a client will purchase a commercial for the show, and they produce all the elements for the commercial. So it kind of like the commercial kind of rolls in the background, and all that's left to add is my live voice reading the copy. You hear this all the time on radio, so we're going to do it here. And increasingly you hear them on podcasts all the time. So it's no biggie. But for us, it's a biggie because it's our first one. So okay. Okay. This read is for a company that makes small, I guess you would call them small coffins. These would be coffins that differ in size from standard coffins. You might imagine they'd be used to, bury someone of smaller stature. And, you might even imagine that they would be used to bury a child, which is obviously a tragic event in any case. But I would imagine if you were ever unfortunate enough to be in a situation like that, and you'd probably want a company to deal with that was experienced and professional. So in a way, this company offers quite a service. Anyway, all that being said, let's give this a try. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. At Hearthstone Memorial, we understand that saying goodbye to the child is the hardest thing a family will ever have to face. I'm sorry. Are we playing the right music? Are we? Is that the? Do we have the right music lined up for this? Can you check that? Yeah. Okay. It just seems like that wouldn't be the music for something like this. Okay. All right. Yeah. At Hearthstone Memorials, we understand that saying goodbye to a child is the hardest thing a family will ever have to face during such an unimaginable loss. Yeah, I think that there's an issue. Are we playing the right music? This isn't what they wanted us to play underneath the read, is it? It is. Can you know what? Can you go back to the original email that they sent? You are. I can't hear you through the glass. Okay. During such an unimaginable loss, your child deserves a resting place as special as they are. Our handcraft coffins. You know what? I'm not comfortable with what you're. Are we sure that we're playing the right? We're sure you're playing it. This is what they sent. Can you forward that email to me? Because this could easily be. We're gonna see if they're around to talk before. Our handcraft coffins are made with care, compassion, and love, honoring the beautiful life they lived. Each detail is thoughtfully designed to bring comfort and peace to families during this difficult time. This doesn't sound weird to you? Because every child leaves a lasting mark on our hearts, and their memory deserves to be cherished forever. Oh, come on. Hearthstone Memorials, crafted with love for those we love. Are you sure you got everything in it? Did you want to play the Benny Hill theme, maybe? All right, welcome back to Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow. I'm with author, director, and pop culture critic Tom Robb. Time now for a segment where we answer questions from you. This is Talking Trump, Talk Back. By the way, if you want to send us a question, hit us up on Instagram at American Emperor Aftershow. This first question is from Rebecca Conway of Madison, Wisconsin. She says, the Trump character introduced another product this week, a brand new coin with his face on it for $100 and a watch for $100,000. What do you think of the merch this season and what's next on the horizon? He has already put out sneakers, Bibles, NFT trading cards. Now it's coins and this $100,000 watch. What do you see coming up?
Oh, I think I see small tattoos of the show and the character on newborn babies' heads. Hair would grow over, but it would always be there, and a reminder. so that there's a classic live forever element to the show.
The Davies character does take part in the profiteering of this, so he definitely has a voice in it. I heard that he would be doing something where he breeds kittens and puppies in such a way that his likeness appears on their belly, so that when a puppy or a kitten turns over on their back for a belly rub, you'd actually be rubbing the face of the Trump character, or Davies in this case.
Yeah, which, just sounds like an unbelievable pleasure.
Let's go to our next question. It's from Kyle Remington of Concord, New Hampshire. A big theme in the show, especially this season, is that the candidates are constantly going to battle over what they are calling an undecided voter. It's part of the show's conceit. But at this point, is it possible that there is an undecided voter? Who are these people? What do they look like? Paint the picture of what an undecided voter is.
I can't imagine not knowing who you're going to vote for 45 years in advance if you know some basic principles of parties. But these people, they need to be told, they need to be shown something shiny and respond to it within 5 minutes, or they'll forget.
One thing that has been speculated about is that after all this attention to the undecided voter comes down to the wire, it's going to turn out to be just one person, one human being to decide which way the country goes. There's been a lot of speculation about who would play that character. Who are you hearing?
I would have thought Chris Christopherson, and then I heard he died. I would have thought Maggie Smith. And then I thought, who would be more perfect than Dikembe Mutombo?
Of course.
And then there we go, that. And then, of course, Pete Rose would be a perfect one.
Also, I've heard James Earl Jones. I hope it's merely a coincidence that the people that are named for this role are passing. I certainly don't hope that somebody doesn't want this person to play this role and is taking matters into their own hands.
I think it'll have to be somebody less famous so that they don't get undecided voter curse.
All right, last question on this run. It's from Todd Lapson of Wilmington, Delaware. With all of the debates that we've seen, who is your favorite moderator?
That's such an interesting question. And also, Todd Lapson of Wilmington, is he related to Dottie Lapson, who was my third grade teacher? I went to elementary school in Wilmington. Just an interesting aside. Let's try to get in touch. Email me right after the show, Todd. I would have to say Jake Tepper. I like Muir, but Tepper has the gravitas that I'm looking for.
He put in a fine comedic performance when he said that he wasn't going to fact check.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6th. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol. What do you say to voters who worry that you'll do it again?
On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. And then he comes in and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people.
President Biden.
Very funny. And he played it very straight.
Very funny, very funny. I know you are, but what am I? A lot of those kind of one-liners.
I'm going to weigh in here with Lindsay Davis, who was the moderator for the Harris-Trump debate. What an amazing performance she put on. I just loved her deadpan style. Take a look at this.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan? You have failed to accomplish that. So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now.
Truly the Aubrey Plaza of moderators.
All right, stick with us, people. When we come back, we will close out the show with some predictions of what to look out for next week. More Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show when we return. Welcome back, everyone. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show. Right now, before we close out the show, a couple of quick predictions for coming weeks. I'm going to jump in and go first here, Tom, with my prediction. It zeroes in on the merch push that the Trump character has been doing. I think what Trump's going to do is he's going to keep throwing out new items of merch, and he's going to come out with an actual poison in the form of Kool-Aid, reminiscent of the Jonestown Massacre. What the show does from time to time is they take a figure in history who's viewed by conventional wisdom a certain way, like James Jones, And they try to spin it and say, oh no, this guy's great. And they do the opposite for somebody good. They're trying to villainize Winston Churchill now in World War II. What Trump is going to do, he's going to have a huge rally in Guyana, mostly because he can't really get venues in the United States anymore because he doesn't pay for them. They're going to go to Guyana and they're going to have basically a rally in Jonestown. He's going to call it Make Jonestown Great Again. He's going to hand out the Trump poison in the same way that Jones gave out his poison. Everyone is going to consume it, but because it's a Trump branded product and it cuts corners on quality, it fails as a poison. It doesn't kill anybody and just leaves them with a very uncomfortable aftertaste of eggs after they drink it.
That's interesting. And it's also a good bet because there's something that's always been very appealing and cheering, sort of feel good to the American people about a sweaty jungle, bloated bodies, murdered children, people kept against their will, people being shot with crude guns on a
running through jungles to a helipad that's empty.
Opioid addictions causing people to torture others, and religious fanaticism. I admire how formal you were with Jim Jones. I call him Jim Jones, not James Jones. My prediction is based on a little bit of inside information. The Trump character makes available in mass amounts in grocery stores, fast food joints, and school cafeterias a vitamin that causes extreme growth, so that the average height of a woman is 6'5", 6'6", the average height of a man 7'8", 7'9". Suddenly Barron is on the normal side. I think, this is a sort of speculative futurism, but it would be interesting to see a show where everyone was tall and happy.
So you're saying that the vitamin causes everybody to grow in height, and therefore that would create for Barron Trump, who is extremely tall, a sense of normalcy, that he wouldn't stand out so much because everybody around him is 7.5 feet tall.
Exactly. And
that would be really the first act of fatherly love that we see from the Trump character.
Exactly.
How beautiful.
A loving thing. And that's the easiest way to get Davies to do something like that.
I love it. I love how he won't exactly work to make his son shorter or arrest whatever's happening in his pituitary gland that's causing this height, but he'd rather make everybody else taller. It's like he's saying, I love you for who you are and what makes you special, and now it will take away what makes you special. I think it's beautiful. I think that should be timed for the Father's Day episode.
Yeah, or also just not telling him, why don't you just sit down? That would take away from the problem.
Also, casting nightmare, because as you know, the original version of Star Wars that Lucas imagined originally, every Ewok, every Jabba, every actor who played a droid, they were all supposed to be 7.5 feet tall. They couldn't find anyone to fill those roles. They only found one 7.5 foot actor. They gave that role to Chewbacca. So they had to, at the last minute, do a page one rewrite where everybody went from being 7.5 feet tall to be a little person. So yes, dwarves worked for Lucas, but that wasn't his original vision.
No. Sometimes a group of dwarves is the only thing that can save a picture. There's an expression in Hollywood for a midget save, and I think they probably changed it for political correctness to a dwarf save or a little person save, where if something's in trouble, you move in a passel of those little folks, they can save a movie that's going south.
Exactly. In Time Bandits, a last-minute save in that pitch was the guy said, these thieves travel through different parts of time. Sean Connery's involved. The executives were not amused. And then he said, wait a minute, did I mention they're all dwarves? Boom, sold in the room.
Well, similarly, the first time it happened in Wizard of Oz, it was like, well, Dorothy lands in a land of normal people. There's a mayor and there's a coroner and
there's a group of lollipop enthusiasts.
There's lollipop enthusiasts and Louis B. Mayer at Universal then, and Michael Curtiz, who was directing, just said, it sounds incredibly boring. It's just a normal town. What if they were all tiny people with squeaky voices? And the room suddenly erupted into applause. The only person who wasn't happy, of course, was the later to be serially molested by them, Judy Garland. That's for another episode.
Of course, and it's okay to use the terms that they used back in the late 1920s when they were pitching this film. Obviously, we wouldn't use it now, but I think Louis Mayer said, why don't we make them all fucking midgets?
Exactly.
Of course, we could never say that today. They would use the proper nomenclature, but yes. All right, well, listen, we have come to the end of another episode. I want to thank Tom Robb for joining me here today. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please check us out on Spotify, on Apple Pods, right here on YouTube as well. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show. Please come on back next week for the next episode that we review, and we're so happy to have you. For Tom Robb, I'm Christopher Lansing. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great week. Have a great day.